All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, we're going to address, even though we don't normally jump on things right away, we're going to address the panic about the white lung that just so happens to be a Christmas miracle before the next election cycle. Uh, and then I didn't know, I forgot we were talking about this, but we were talking about romance on the screen, and I wore the right shirt. So that was accidental, but they do, by the way. Any groupies out there, you can send me pictures. Not you, Scott. Unless Scott is short for something else.
uh, well, where do you want to start then?
Let's get the
Uh,
white lung over. I think that'll be quick.
yeah, I mean, my brain is, and I may talk about this later, depending on how long we ramble here, but my brain is completely fried because I had a jury duty summons to go to on Monday
Oh yeah,
this
we should
week.
talk about that because I think that's an important topic.
And I was in the central jury room, uh, waiting my turn, and I was looking around, and I sent you a text that said, "Why are so many people wearing masks? What's going on here? Is this still or again?" And oh no, it's again.
Because headlines. That's what. Pneumonia outbreak in Ohio kids has parents worried it's spreading. Know these symptoms. Now, if you go down and actually read the full article, it's not horrible. They kind of check the fears, that it's actually kind of the normal levels. But the this one says pneumonia outbreak, but here's the other headlines. The white lung. This is also, if you read the actual article, more sober, but the headlines, it's all about the headlines. And they're playing on the fact that during the COVID outbreak, one of the one of the telltale signs was basically if you had a bad infection of COVID and it took over your lungs, a chest x-ray would show basically a whiteout of your lungs. All the chest x-ray shows is an infection. This whole white lung thing is just playing off the verbiage that came out during that time.
Hmm.
So the headlines are all white lung, white lung. And I hate all these advertisements. Gosh, Durgit, you're the freaking CBS News. You get paid by enough people. Quit bogging down our pages. But the Ohio white lung pneumonia cases not linked to China outbreak. Oh, amazing. There's this we got to worry about now. Okay, so I wanted to kind of just bring the headlines out and then talk about kind of a more sober argument on this. I When I was prepping for this, I saw Dr. Drew had something on this, and he wigged out on the whole terminology of white lung because basically, as I just said, any infection in the lung is going to show a white lung X-ray. That's one of the things you look for. And a pneumonia is just an infection of the lungs. It's a general term. It could be bacterial, could be viral, could be caused by there's a ventilator induced pneumonia that could happen. You could have just laid on your back too long. That's one of the things about getting injured is you want to get up and move around.
Yeah, and something broke us and I think it's because we were already broken and we wanted to be broken during COVID, where we heard the term novel virus and everyone kind of freaked out that this was something totally new and unprecedented, and it wasn't. It was just a new, different
It was just something our
formation,
bodies hadn't experienced before.
hadn't encountered before,
Mhm.
but it wasn't novel in that we've never encountered a mass respiratory virus infection.
Well,
We
it's not
have
even it's
for
not even novel
millennia.
that we experience a coronavirus
Uh-huh.
because the common cold, there's four strains of coronavirus that cause that.
It's cold and flu season. This happens when the weather gets cold, people go inside, they have the sniffles, so they're in close contact, spreading mucus and respiratory droplets. So people get sick. This isn't new, but the freak out is somewhat new. and it's
Yes.
continuing. I had hoped we had learned lessons, and so I'm hoping this is much more media hype than public panic.
Well, media hype produces public panic,
Sure. Or
especially since there is actually an uptick in China with a pneumonia phenomenon. And we're going to go into details of that here in a second. But yeah, media panic can produce public panic, which is, again, nobody's innocent in this. Even if you're just trying to get the headline out first and you're not doing your due diligence, you're not innocent. You may not be evil, but you're stupid enough to be bad.
mhm.
And that, so the headlines are misleading at best. And even if there's a slight uptick, well, guess what we just did for the last few years? We avoided people.
Mhm.
That's going to have an effect on your immune system. Oh, developmental processes, amazing how that works. And especially in children who actually require being around germs, especially the germs they're going to come in contact most often. So they should have been in daycares. They should have been in school. They should have been playing at the park with other kids with sniffly noses and, sharing the snow cone, even though you told them not to lick the other person's thing they licked. Don't clip that. That sounded so bad. Uh,
Uh,
no, but seriously, I mean, just think about the kid with the snotty nose that goes and then picks up the other thing and gives it to the other kid, and then they put it in their mouth. It's
yes.
that's being a kid. That's how we develop. That's how we get better at being robust against the environment. Now,
It's
if
also
there
why your immune system is on overdrive when you're that young.
so that actually goes right into China. Who locked down the hardest of
Oh
any
yeah.
country in the entire world?
For the longest too.
For the longest and the hardest. They were nailing you inside.
That they were still last year locking down entire cities if a
Single case
testing
showed up.
yeah
Yeah.
if a testing threshold was reached, and that was sometimes a single case, and they would lock down an entire building, an entire block, an entire city, to the extent that people were desperately on social media saying, hey, we're literally starving here because the police, the military won't let us out of our houses, our apartment blocks, and we've run out of food. And I think I've mentioned before, one of the channels I follow is called China Uncensored, and they've been talking about this uh, a lot, about the severity of these lockdowns and the basically the dangerous game that Xi Jinping is trying to play here. Because on the one hand, China for decades, um, really since Deng Xiaoping opened up the country, has been terrified of their populace and try to keep them in control with a growing economy. So on the one hand, they're terrified of tanking the economy, but on the other hand, Xi Jinping is doing a Putin style power play here, and that's part of what the lockdowns are.
Okay, so now let's look at the other difference with China and the rest of the world, or China and us in the Western world, I should say. Vitamin A deficiency. Chinese youth are more likely to have vitamin A deficiency than Western youth. Vitamin A deficiency impairs innate immunity by impeding normal regeneration of mucosal barriers, the lungs, damaged by infection and by diminishing the function of neutrophils, macrophages, and natural killer cells. Natural killer cells, what our children depend on to defend themselves when they are learning their environment. Vitamin A, infection, and immune function. All right. That is more common in countries like China, especially the poor parts of China. Now, in the Western world, here, okay, so let me give you the disclaimers or standard disclaimers. We are not giving you direct medical advice. If you are ill, go to a doctor. This is just some general information. This is for educational purposes only. But vitamin A is a byproduct of the processing of beta carotene. Eat your carrots. Eat your sweet potatoes, your orangey vegetables.
I have a story about that this just reminded me of.
So if your kid's on the chicken nugget diet, force them to eat a few carrots here and there. And you're going to at least improve their immune system. Now, whether it's going to be preventative or not, I can't tell you, but it's definitely a step in the right direction because your kids should be eating some vegetables and not just chicken nuggets.
I'm old enough to remember when Dr. Fauci went on the news and said that he takes a vitamin D supplement and recommended that everyone else do that too. And you should be fine if you're a healthy individual. And then a few weeks later said, you're all going to die, mask up and stay home.
Well, you can vitamin A supplement too, but here's where I would be cautious there. Vitamin A is a fat soluble vitamin, and all fat soluble vitamins have a toxicity level. And direct supplementation could put you over that toxicity level.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas eating vegetables with a lot of vitamin A, or fruits and vegetables with a lot of vitamin A, your body processes the beta carotene into vitamin A and it self-regulates
as is needed. Right.
Yeah, as
all right.
needed.
So the story about this that this just reminded me of, and I don't remember how many years ago this was, but it was when the hippies were going nuts over GMO, which there are some reasons in some cases to be concerned. For instance, trans fat. That was a modified fat that we people did because we were told that saturated fat was evil and this was how they were going to make us all healthy. And then they realized, oh crap, this causes cancer.
Here's a golden rule. If your vegetable oil is solid at room temperature, it is full of trans fats. Crisco, for instance, the coating on a Dorito, that kind of stuff. If your vegetable oil is liquid at room temperature, it's just polyunsaturated fats. Now, there's still issues with that, especially when you heat it, but it's at least not trans fat. And your threshold for trans fat is very low. It's like 2 grams or 2.5 grams. And so when you see a Dorito bag that says low in trans fats and they have 0.5 grams on there, well, you're already 25% of the way to your threshold.
So the problem is those kinds of details get lost in the hysteria. And 10, 15 years ago, when the hippy dippy left was going, portions of the hippy dippy left were going nuts over GMO. And my comment to friends was, well, then stop eating corn, because corn is probably the oldest genetically modified agricultural product. It does not exist in nature, did not exist in nature.
Well, the educated ones out there are actually mostly talking about corn when they talk about GMOs, because we genetically modified it so it will live through the process of spraying Roundup.
No, I mean, just don't eat it at all, because
you're talking about selective breeding.
Exactly.
That's genetic modification.
No, but that's what selective breeding is. It is genetic modification. It's just
but that's like saying using exercise to lose weight is modification of weight and a tummy tuck is a modification of weight. They're two different mechanisms.
No, they're two different mechanisms, but it is the same idea. It is the same principle. So my point being, how is it being genetically modified and why is it being genetically modified? And the whole point of this story is because I remember this infuriating incident where this, and I can't remember if it was in the US or Europe, that a mob of crazies, similar to the current fad of gluing yourself to a highway, this mob of crazies burnt down a warehouse full of golden rice. Did you ever hear about golden rice?
No.
It's not something you get here because we don't need it. What golden rice was is it was a genetically modified strain of rice that had beta carotene in it. That's where the golden color came from. And the whole idea was growing cereals is a lot easier than getting a balanced diet in third world countries. The idea was to export this or give away this strain of rice to help the health levels in third world countries, because it would be a much easier way to boost vitamin A levels than what had been happening, which is a lot of charity organizations, Doctors Without Border type people, would go in and give vitamin A supplements to people. This was a
Okay.
much
Yeah,
easier and more
that's
natural way
direct.
and
Yeah.
better for the body if you could take in beta carotene in your normal diet. And these lunatics burnt this stuff down. I'm sorry, why do you hate poor colored people in third world countries, you evil colonial racists?
Which is funny because we blast the RDA recommendations on a lot of things a lot of the time because they're ridiculous. But the original food pyramid, not only was it based on bad science, but it was one of those road to hell in good intentions kind of moments because grains and corn are plentiful. And the intention of the original food pyramid was that nobody starves.
Mm-hmm.
And meat and regular vegetables are expensive and hard to make. And so the intention was nobody starves. The problem is it made us all fat. And a lot of people made a lot of money on it. But if we were going to talk about third world countries, growing that and shipping it to third world countries is actually a very noble thing to do. And if you can make it even better for them, like you just brought up with the beta carotene, or fortifying, fortified rice, fortified flour, all of those things you see fortified on it, that means they've added vitamins and minerals to it, right? If you can do that to these third world countries, well, the other option for those people is starving. In those countries, if you're poor, you're not overweight. It's not the that's
Starving.
why I put the weird book up because we are Western, industrialized, educated, rich, and democratic. That's what weird stands for. The key word rich. Our poor are rich. Yeah, psychologically it's stressful because you're comparing yourself to the people around you, but physically we're overweight. We are overprivileged in a lot of ways.
I feel like I derailed us a little bit there.
You did derail us a
Um,
little bit, but the main point is, no, that's not a bad thing because it's still on the same subject. Don't The headlines are there. Be careful because we're going into an election year. This whole white lung thing. If there is an uptick in children with bacterial pneumonias in the lungs, it's probably because we did lockdown. So let's not make the same mistake twice
mhm.
and do it again. That just so happens to show up 4 years from now. So it's a it's a lesson in let's not make the same mistakes. And then on the flip side, where we just went down this rabbit hole, it's a lesson in let's really start focusing on the things we can control, like our own health.
Yeah.
Carrots are cheap. Even if you're poor, carrots are a good way
Yes,
to
it's true.
bulk up your diet. You can get a bag of carrots for 99 cents and you can spread that over 3 meals. And your kid's full, they're tasty, and he gets his vitamins. She, they, whatever, gets their
Z,
vitamins.
sir.
Either
Fur person.
for no.
All right.
Okay, that's
Um,
enough on that. Let's move to
yes.
the next topic. You
What was
you
our next
introduced this
topic?
one, so because it's what you brought to me.
Oh, yeah, this is depressing to me.
Do you want me to bring up the article?
Yeah, I don't remember who I got this. Oh, I think it was the YouTube channel English guy named Echo Chamberlain. Um, and I said, "Wait, what?" And he showed clips from there's a YouTube video at the bottom that's kind of the um summary of it. I didn't dive into the study itself yet. Um, but it's really depressing, but not surprising that and I had kind of noticed this a while ago, and I don't remember what first triggered it, where I it just kind of dawned on me. You don't see sex scenes anymore in big films, in major motion pictures, or really hardly even any nudity. Most R ratings come from violence, language, gore, that kind of thing, subject matter. But and I
I will say
remember,
I will say there's an or there, or they overcompensate and there's no boobies and there's all penises now.
yes, or that,
Yeah.
or that.
I
Um,
some shows I'm just like, okay, so your advertising is racy, but you're only giving one side of the racy. I understand that was the other way in the past,
Hmm.
but why can't we have both?
I remember that Entertainment Tonight was quite titillating when I was a child because there would be big kerfuffles over one specific instance. I remember Bram Stoker's Dracula, which
Oh
was a mostly
yes,
terrible movie,
I
but it had
loved
a
that movie.
lesbian vampire three-way in it.
Mhm.
And that was kind of its claim to fame because otherwise it wasn't a very good movie.
That
You don't have
that
that
was a
anymore.
15-year-old fat fest right there. That was
Yeah, exactly. And
back when you had to hit rewind if you took too long, you know.
but that is I'm the puritanical one, so I'm supposed to say no, that's bad, Sam. But it's also normal if 15-year-old boys are recoiling or feeling uncomfortable or you know uh, for some reason loathe the idea of that, that's a problem because we the pendulum has swung now and very quickly. um I mean, the over sexualization of children and teens has been a major problem for a long time with not only the depictions of mid 20 something actors and actresses being in raunchy high school movies, so but then the marketing to children and teens, and that is part of the over sexualization of children, culminating I think in Cuties, which was one of the most awful things ever put on screen. And I watched, I don't remember who, one of the people I watched did a deep dive on it of what the movie was really about and what it was saying and what it was depicting. And it was pretty gross. Even if you look at it charitably, even if you give, the benefit of the doubt that, well, this wasn't made by pedos, this was made by with good intentions, it's still pretty awful. And then somewhere a switch got flipped to where now there's this almost asexuality when it comes to children and teens. And for the children part, that's a good thing.
Well, yeah, you just said kind of a short version of what I was going to say next is we talk about the law of unintended consequences. We always
Mm-hmm.
talk about it in a negative way. And what if accidentally by hypersexualizing everything and trying to normalize it and destigmatize it, we took the naughty out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's like, meh, if I'm gonna be bad, I'm gonna do something bad.
You
And
did
it's
take the uh oh, brain fart, what's the word I'm looking for? The natural teenage rebellion part of it, the transgressive part of it, as my brain got stuck on other trans things. The transgressive part of it was an element to it that not only has that been taken away, which led to its own problems in ours and younger generations, but in this current generation, now you have not confused it, but then also um made it rigid in your own puritanical way. That when I read bits from this study, when I watched the YouTube video down at the bottom, one of the things that I kept hearing between the lines of what these Gen Zers were saying about romance and sex on screen is that we have made it icky in a very different kind of puritanical way because uh, romance and sex on screen are problematic because of toxic masculinity, because of gender norms, because of uh, uh, sexual stereotypes, and all of these things have led to an ooh no, that's icky in a way that I would say even surpasses what the Christian conservative right tried to do to those kinds of things in the 80s and 90s.
well, that's a that's a little bit of a distinction without a difference, I think. But you can see the generational gap. I watched. Have you seen Bohemian Rhapsody?
No.
Okay, so amazing documentary on Freddie Mercury. For those of us in our generation who know who Freddie Mercury actually is, he's a gay man, and there's a scene where he kisses another man. It doesn't show anything else, but still, my more mature in age clients are like, I had to fast forward. I had to fast forward, and I was just like, okay. But at the same time, we get the flip side is these kids are rebelling against, oh, we don't want to see any romance.
I just you said distinction without a difference, and then I just thought of it. No,
Oh,
there is one, and here's why. So let me give this as an example. When the Christian conservative right went after South Park shortly after it came out, it was
who
to
they actually laud now because they're towing the other line
but it,
by not changing it all. By the way, by not changing it
yes.
all,
But no, when the Christian conservative right went after South Park in the late 90s when it first came out, yes, there were people that saying you shouldn't watch this because it's, wrong, immoral, whatever. But they weren't trying to cancel South Park. They just wanted it. They were pressuring uh, Comedy Central to move it to late at night because it originally was coming on at like 8 o'clock. And
which is
and
prime time. Yeah,
and actually, Parker and Stone, I don't remember when, but later on said, "Oh, we actually liked that. We wanted that because we thought we would get a bigger and more hardcore audience later at night because of how transgressive and raw our comedy was."
and prophetic,
Now,
by the way.
now when the woke left goes after South Park, they want them gone. And I think there's an analogy there to what's happening with sex and romance, that the puritanical Christians who were attacking sex and romance on screen were wanting to either limit it or put it in its, as they saw it, proper confines, proper context, appropriateness. Now the woke left and the Gen Z, what I'm seeing here is they want it gone. They don't want to contextualize this thing. This thing that offends them must be expunged.
I wonder, did they do these surveys when we were younger? I don't think so. I've never heard of this until
Well,
this.
there were I do remember similar surveys because I remember the right making a big deal about the fact that I don't remember who did it, but there was a periodic survey of adolescence and sexual behavior and sexual attitudes that had been done through the 80s and 90s. And after the Clinton Lewinsky scandal, there was a huge spike in adolescents who were reporting that they were engaging in oral sex. And the right made a big deal about this, of how the president of the United States had um, normalized oral sex and made it more permissive because it's not sex.
Okay, I want to highlight number. I want to highlight it, but it's in the pictures in the graphic. Number 4. Social media is still rated the most authentic media platform. This already tells you need to take some of this with a grain of salt.
Well,
Social media and authentic are just very much not cohesive with each other. In fact, the it's in the name. Did you do the latest TikTok trend?
mm,
If you're doing the trend, you are not being authentic.
yes, but I would say what to me what that indicates is that it's revealing that this is a symptom, this isn't the disease. That the fact that they consider TikTok to be the most authentic uh, um, and relatable and reliable social media platform gives you a clue to the underlying mental illness that is contributing to this asexual behavior.
No, well, what I brought up the surveys earlier. Let me get back on topic. My eyes just went to the graphic there, but I remember being an adolescent and watching a like a superhero show, or like a movie like Braveheart, or something that a young budding soon to be adult male would love, and always wondering, why the hell do they keep having to add the romance to it?
Mm.
Why can't this just be an action movie? And I remember having those thoughts, and I wonder if some of those thoughts are the exact same thoughts here. It's like, yeah, we want a romance because I'm watching an action movie. I'm watching a superhero movie. Why do I have to have this love story? What?
Well, I think there was a difference there though, because generally that was if it was a romance story, that's why Top Gun is such a great movie. It was so successful because it was basically a chick flick that tricked guys by having F-14s in it. Um, but there's a difference. I don't recall hearing or feeling that complaint when the good guy, the hero gets the girl, right? But it uh but James Bond is a great example because there is romance, wink wink nudge nudge, in those films,
No, there's romance.
but
There's
it's
just
not
there's not the attachment phase of the romance. Romance is the eros phase.
it's not romance in genre. Like the love story in Braveheart is a little deeper, giggity, and more detailed so that it becomes a romantic subplot. Whereas for uh which is appealing to the female audience, but for guys, yeah, we want the hero to get the girl because we're living vicariously in this moment. Um, but we don't want to get bogged down with the process, with the details. Whereas I read this as they don't want it at all, even tacitly.
Well, we do have data that young, both boys and girls, are having a lot less sex than they used to. So, I mean, there is something to it. I'm just wondering if it's the taking the naughty out of it, or if it's lack of testosterone, if it's birth control in females, if it's uh like you brought up, maybe a rebellious streak that, oh, my parents say it's okay, so I'm going to go the other direction and say it's not. uh
Well, I don't think it's that because you have seen in um like there was a trend for a while that survey data was showing that I want to say it was millennials were becoming more conservative faster than their parents did. And I think that was that counter reaction to the more permissive Gen Xers who were like, yeah, no, okay, that's fine. Do what you want. And I think that was leading to a stronger conservative libertarian leaning. I think this is more problematic, more potentially dangerous because it's not the natural ebb and flow of generations. It is a complete rejection of the concept, which to me is really worrying.
Let me throw another wrinkle in there. Again, I can't highlight it because it's on the graphic, but it's number 2 there. Very few adolescents prefer very few adolescents prefer aspirational content.
Mm,
The majority favor original content over IP based content. Also, the majority prefer binge releases over weekly releases. Now, there's an attention span thing there, so
mm,
that's one thing, but there might be an overload of aspirational content on social media.
mm,
You do you, self-care, self-love, all of this. Relationships are hard,
mm.
and the best romance movies, or even movies that are action movies that have a romance in it, show the ugly side of romance and how you get through that, and then and that actually increases the passion. I wonder if kids aren't interested in that as well.
So let's pause a sec because my dog's going nuts and wants out.
Okay. uh Sorry for that hiccup, but it actually helped me uh formulate my thought a little better, and I'm actually going to reverse direction. It's the fact that we took the grit out of romance that might be the issue here. We've bitched and moaned about the Wheel of Time show.
Mm.
Rand and Egwene are sleeping together from the beginning. Lan and Nynaeve, the first chance they get. We took the hard part out of romance, and maybe teens are actually are actually unconsciously longing for that. They're longing for the grit that is romance, the part that actually builds the passion.
There's something to that, I think, because
It's not that they don't want it, it's the way it's being presented is uninteresting.
my thought as I was trying to gather my thoughts, and I had too many, and one of the things that kind of dawned on me is, well, you do see couples still in modern screen, television, and movies. Um, but it's very superficial, and most of the time it's paying homage to the LGBTQAI plus two silent P movement, and so it's oh look, it's the same sex couple, aren't we progressive? Um, but they're not really a couple, because if you know anything about being in a relationship, there's nothing there. There's no there. It's just, oh, look, they're together. It's very superficial, it's very simple, it's very easy. And I wonder if one of the reasons Gen Z is has, either antipathy, apathy, or whatever towards relationships is because they themselves have never been able to experience the fulfillment of a relationship, because they, not even they, you can go all the way, go to our generation and down, the lack of accomplishment because of the participation trophies and the not having to work for something. One of the reasons you do, besides just, you know, the instinctual, the desire, all of uh, the lizard brain kind of stuff that you talk about. But beyond that, one of the reasons that makes relationships feel good is because you actually had to work for something. You actually had to do something. You actually had to accomplish something. If you don't have to do that, then I feel like any relationship is going to be very shallow and thus very unfulfilling.
We just talked about this last time to some degree. The incels, sorry, just all you have to do is show you're going to work for it.
Mm.
You're already going to increase your chances. And women, quit not making them work for it. That was the conclusion we came to last time. And no surprise, people are disconnected from that because cinema is one place we develop our social roles, we develop our identities in the modern world. I mean, you and I grew up saying we wanted to be, Batman or Superman or something. I don't want to be Batman because don't kill my mom, but uh it's we had aspirations and we kind of built our identity around that. What are kids building their identity around right now? I don't even know modern shows. You're gonna have to tell me. So
I sidetracked myself a little bit here trying to find um this
oh,
made me
this
curious.
supports my self-love, self-care thing. Feel good characters.
I was trying to find because the this survey is all about romance on screen, and they're not interested in that kind of content.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not watching that. And then of course the thought that popped into my head was, how much porn are they watching? So they don't want to see actual
Oh, you're
romance.
talking about like a relativity
Yeah.
argument now.
Yeah. So they don't want to see romance, but they just want to get their rocks off on, let me watch some porn and squeeze one out. And then that's just going to add to the shallowness though, because there's no, again, there's no there. It's a very fleeting high, and then there's no substance to it. And I think that's just going to further depress that sex drive, because you get the immediate physical release, but then there's going to be a down of, if that's all you're getting, I feel like it's going to further suppress that romantic drive, because this isn't worth it. And I couldn't find
I just got
like,
curious, and a quick search. This is the first thing that popped up.
huh.
So you said porn, and my immediate thought was boys. And I was like, I wonder what women are doing. Well, apparently in Britain, that was just the first one that popped up, and there's probably more. Yeah, 110% of last year. That's a sizable increase.
Um, the one survey result I did find when I was scrolling around here was a survey which showed that 25.76% of Generation Z is dependent on masturbation to fall asleep.
Oh wow. Oh, here's an NPR. So we're giving our not normal bias on sources here. And this is Baltimore, Baltimore Charm City. So this is the US as well. So in Western society, book sales are going down, but romance novels are going up. But yet we have a survey where they don't want to see it on screen. I wonder if it's more simple than we're making it, that it's just not done well right now.
Well, I mean, there's definitely an element to that, because these modern writers don't know how to. So there's kind of a circular thing here, because they don't know how to write it well, because they don't know it well themselves.
Well, I wonder if there's an underlying uh we talk about uh the cross-sex mind reading being off, and there's so many women out there that are doing the writing right now that are boss bitch, this is what we should be, when that's not what men want. But the male writers are such big simps that they're just going along with it, even though they're like, that's not what I want.
Mhm.
That we're just getting a product that's not human nature.
No, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And that's so much of what we talk about on Fridays, is why Jordan worked and the show doesn't, is because whether it, and we've said this a lot, whether he knew this, like this theory or fact about, you know uh evolutionary psychology, or you know psychological studies of male female interactions or whatever, but he nails it in the portrayal of these things. That's going to resonate, because it's going to feel real. This was a random thought I had when I was watching, I don't know what. It was someone complaining about Napoleon and the historical inaccuracies, and that kind of sent me down a train of thought that led me to, why does fidelity to the source material matter? Well, if you don't respect the source material, when you're whether it's a historical epic or if it's The Witcher. The Witcher never felt real unless it was Henry Cavill on screen, because he's the only one who bought into the world.
Have you watched? Have you watched the? Is there already episodes with what's his face?
No,
Okay, because
no,
you said that in the way that you are comparing it already.
I'm comparing it to everyone else I'm comparing it to the other elements in those first three
Oh,
seasons.
okay, because I was like, I missed something. I missed the release of it. Because
No,
yeah, I'm disenfranchised with it, but at the same time, we talk about it, so I feel like it's duty to
yeah,
watch that. Yeah.
Cavill makes you feel like that is Geralt of Rivia and he really belongs here, and this is who he really is, and this is so you're able to achieve that suspension of disbelief because to him this is a very real world. When he is playing the game or reading the books or acting out the awful screenwriting for the series, he's fully buying into the world. If you don't appreciate, and in fact, from things we've heard about behind the scenes, you actually loathe the source material, then it's not going to be real. And I think that that ties in perfectly with what you just said, in the same way that if you don't know how a real relationship works, you're not going to be able to authentically write or portray one on screen, and it's going to fall flat. It's not going to be interesting. It's not going to be engaging because you're never going to be able to suspend disbelief that I'm watching, I'm watching two actors engaged in romance here rather than I'm watching these people expressing their romantic feelings authentically. I think I've mentioned this before, but the first time I played Mass Effect 2, and I had the thought, do have any of these writers ever been in a real relationship?
Yeah, you have mentioned
Because
that. Yeah.
because of how the relationships carry over from Mass Effect 1 to 2.
I'm looking for some data. I'm because I've heard it, but I'm trying to find the actual studies on it. Maybe I should go to Google Scholar instead of regular Google. Hold on. But it's something about women wanting to be approached by men, but men are afraid to approach.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of started with this about um the added layer on top of something that's already difficult, the added layer of confusion of, you know, the Me Too is the perfect example of when it went overboard, and people like Aziz Ansari, who I think is just a annoying douchebag and not very funny, but still, he was excoriated for having a Me Too movement. But then normal people looked at the story that was written about him and said, that was just a bad date. I mean, why would you want to go out on a date with someone when already you have to worry about that, about just having a bad date, having a bad experience, and now you have to worry about being an evil monster?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a dance out there right now because men have a perception bias in over emphasizing in their own brains the and I'm pulling from the work of David Buss here, overemphasizing the receptiveness of women. So that girl looks at you and you're like, oh, she's into me. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she might have just looked at you.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas women have a bias against that. So, oh, he keeps staring at me.
He's a creep.
He's a creep, but he's not into me. He's just uh
Leering.
yeah, just leering.
He's not
So
checking me out. He's just, eye effing me.
yeah, and so there's an adaptive purpose to that. Is women are protective of their reproductive cost, and men are more. It's better to be wrong and not have an opportunity when there could have been one than to miss an opportunity for men when it comes to reproduction.
Mm,
So it's so that bias exists, but at the same time, if you never make the approach, you never know if you were wrong.
yes.
But on the flip side of that, let me talk from experience here. So this is all anecdote. Women will approach men too nowadays. But here's the big but. That's okay. That's cool. That's awesome. That gets rid of the whole I feel like I'm going to be a creep thing. But you have to take control a little bit right away and start controlling the flow of the conversation. Whether you're if you dance, don't let her lead. Come on, simps out there, don't let her lead. You have to lead even
You,
if you
you
can't dance.
you have to be, what's the dirty word? Masculine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you control the flow of the flirt and everything at that point, even if she approached you. Otherwise, she's going to disrespect you right away,
Mm.
and you'll get a fake number. I'm sorry, you're going to get a fake number. But yeah, that's just the way it is. Yeah. Okay. So yes, women can't approach men. Women, don't be afraid to approach men because men are afraid right now, and it's not their fault. It's culture. Uh, so if you like a guy across the bar, say hi. But at the same time, if you're the guy, don't let that control the rest of the conversation.
Where this is, I started out saying this is depressing is because, as I've said before, I'm glad I'm not a youngster or even my age now. I'm glad I'm not single because trying to navigate all of this is terrifying, but it is necessary. And it's not just, for the propagation of the species, but for your own mental health. You need to find that yin to your yang or vice versa to be a fully complete person. You need to put in that work to develop yourself. It's working on a relationship is going to make you a better person in the same way that coaching a sport makes you better at the sport. It makes you learn more about the sport, makes you understand more. And I think there's something similar there to having to work on a relationship makes you better at yourself and better at understanding human nature intuitively because you are having to ebb and flow with another person.
Well, and that is one big problem that's I think we're seeing a lot of is theory of mind. Is theory of mind is being able to interact with other people and actually pick up on social cues from those
Mm-hmm.
people. Uh, it's a very minor version of mind reading, but we have to have that to some degree. You don't want to mind read to such a degree that you're putting intentions into people, but you have to be able to pick up on how they're feeling at the moment, what their uh receptiveness to you is. It's not their intentions, what their receptiveness is. The intentions can come later. You can change intentions in somebody if you have the right makeup for it, but it's this ability to interact with people is actually greatly reduced these days, partly because we're seeing a rise in autism. That's one of the traits of autism is a low theory of mind. They do not pick up on social cues very well.
You just made me think of something that I'd had this thought before, and I haven't thought to ask you. Is there any literature on how much of being on the spectrum might be learned behavior?
I'll have to look that up more in depth, but it is definitely something that can be influenced over time. And this is one of those where you have to like take a seriously multifaceted approach because high sugar diets at a young age can increase that. Whereas neglect at a young age could increase that. Bad experiences with other people can
Hmm.
result in that. How your parents interact can result in that. But I think it's one of those that I think is right on it's 50% genetic, and then the shift is everything else in life.
Well, it just as an analogy, um, we've kind of used this analogy before of fast food, junk food isn't the problem per se. We ate junk food when we were kids, but we also went outside and played. We also didn't eat it all the time. It was a treat.
Well, I didn't eat out. We had it once a year, so it was. I
There was
wouldn't
still
say that's a
junk,
part of your diet.
right? There was still junk food available, even if you weren't the kind of family that would, go through the drive-through or eat out a lot. Uh,
We ate a lot of beans and cornbread.
Junk food was still available, but you went outside and played. Likewise, uh, we watched violent cartoons all the time and we didn't become school shooters. That came later. But we also had parents and a community that kept most of us, for the most part, well adjusted so that we didn't become warped by those things that other people down the road did become warped by because they didn't have that balancing element. And I feel like that may be a lot of where you see this growth of people on the spectrum now is, me and a friend of ours have talked about this, Stal, that we would almost certainly, if we were in school today, our parents would have been told by a school counselor that he's autistic, he's on the spectrum, almost certainly. But we weren't told that, and we just had to suck it up and deal with it. And we had a good family structure to help us um, manage our inherent personality traits with the need to get along in society, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to let you talk to that because I understand that I'm the exception to the rule on a lot of things when it comes
Yes.
to upbringing. So I don't, I don't really speak to the normal life very much. Uh, Most people with my childhood are in jail. So, but yes, I would say I get accused of that a lot. But this is where your nurture over nature comes in. I don't know if it's nature
Mm.
because did we talk about parenting? And I talked about how I have to think about it versus something that comes natural.
We've talked about that before.
Did we talk about
Not
it on
not
here?
not as a deep dive topic, but we have talked about parenting and how our own parentage affected that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So your parents were the first like stable parenting experience I ever had. And so I was already what, 17?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
thereabouts.
because your mom was my teacher in 5th grade, but as far as actually being part of your family per se, it was about 17 going on 18 years
Yeah.
old. So when I do things from a parenting or even a relationship standpoint, I would have to say, if you really, really, really pay attention, you notice I'm a few hundredths of a second behind on everything because I have to take a second to think about everything because I had to learn it. It wasn't part of my young childhood development. And so it's not ingrained, it's not innate in me. I have to say, oh, okay, now I need to do this and this and this, however long that mental process takes. And so that I think is a trait of what you see with autistic people. They have to actually think something
Mm.
through before the actual reaction comes out.
Well, we always try and, if we can, end on a not depressing note because we often talk about depressing topics, but I guess there's your silver lining that none of this is hopeless, none of this is set in stone because these kinds of behaviors can be adjusted. If you are a parent and you are seeing this mindset in your children, it's going to be harder if they're older, if they're already teenagers. It's going to be harder to shift and adjust behaviors, but it's not impossible. And same with even if you're a grown adult and you see this in yourself or your close friends, it's not impossible to adjust these behaviors. You just have to find the systems, the mechanisms, the habits that are necessary to shift away from these bad habits, these negative outlooks that are being a drain on your mental health or on your child's mental health or friend or whatever.
Well, we've got psychosocial theory with Eric Erikson, who was a student of Freud. And he took Freud to the next level and he talked with a bunch of evolutionary psychs. Plus, uh, he brought in the environmental psychology kind of field, which they were all real separate at one time. Everything was so divided and everybody was fighting with each other. But he brought a lot of people in. And I think he's one of the few people that got Freud right.
Mm.
And there's these developmental stages. And there are certain things that happen in these stages that the environment around you is most impactful on, like young adolescence, adulthood. What do you call it? Puberty and adolescence is what he called it, is where your friend group is the most influential thing in your life. And then now we're developing social roles within that. Whereas before that, it's your parental groups. And before that, it's actually self discovery. You know, I picked something up and put it in my mouth and it caused me to choke and I survived. I don't do that again, kind of thing. So he kind of laid this all out, but then he comes in at the very end, and this is what Freud didn't do. Freud's attachment theory is, oh, you're set for life if
Mm.
you had the neglectful mother or the overbearing mother, or all of these things. Said, yeah, these things can be fixed later. It's just harder. If you got to young adulthood, but you didn't experience the right things during adolescence, you can still get close to the same end result, but you have to work really hard to get there. And you might not be perfect. We do this in physical training. You have your genetic potential. So there's a curve. If you did everything right in your life, this is how your physical body would be. And every little bump along the way lowers that. So yeah, maybe I had a broken leg in high school. So my ability to have muscle mass in my legs is going to be affected for the rest of my life. Doesn't mean I can't gain muscle mass in my legs, and doesn't mean I can't be badass. It means I'm going to be a slight tick below that genetic potential. And same thing with psychology. So it really is a struggle, though. And you got to work hard for it. And that's what we got to teach our kids. That's the silver lining. We got to figure out how to get them to actually care.
Mm. Speaking of struggles and silver linings and difficult things, we got a few minutes for me to kind of rant and meander about jury duty. Um,
This is fun. I don't know
this
where
is,
this is going to go because I could take
yeah.
this in a lot of different directions, but
So, first of all, at least here they have there's a lot of hurry up and wait, but it's not as egregious as like trying to go get your driver's license done. They do have a pretty good system of moving people through, um, and getting the process over as quickly as possible. Although in my case, I didn't get out of there until like 3:30, almost 4 o'clock. And I suspect it was because it was a criminal case. When my wife went in a few years ago, it was for a civil case. And so I think they may do the jury selection process differently because she was out a lot quicker. They figured out a lot quicker that, all right, we don't need you people. We've got our jury. The rest of the pool is dismissed. Um, so uh, you would have appreciated the judge, because he was a Polish immigrant who went to A&M. So one of the things he said is, it's like two negatives canceling each other out. I'm a Polak and an Aggie. I'm the smartest guy in the room. Um, and I appreciated the judge's sense of humor and his ability to break the ice. You've got 70 people, 70 strangers awkwardly crammed into this courtroom so that the two attorneys can wadir uh, them. Uh, it wasn't quite as painful as I thought because the judge went on for a while talking about, you know, the general idea of why you should look at this seriously, but also with some gratitude of be thankful that you have this option because he could literally remember looking out his apartment window and seeing tanks rolling down the street. Presumably from his age, I'm guessing that was the Solidarity movement, which was late 70s, early 80s in Poland. And then the Soviet Union and the communist Polacks rolled in the tanks to crush it. Um, so he can literally remember that. He can literally remember bread lines, and so that was nice. But then the hammer dropped when the prosecutor got up to introduce the case, and they can't tell you about the details, but he did show the statutes that we would have to consider, and it was creation of child pornography.
okay, so actual creation, not consuming.
Mm-hmm. And to make a bad situation even worse, there's a part of the statute that deals with parents. So the mom was the defendant. We come to find out. So this is extra awful. And on a personal narcissistic mode, this was extra awful for me because very quickly there were a handful, half a dozen or so people who raised their hand, or when they were questioned by the attorney said, I can't do this due to personal, and some of them couldn't finish the sentence. You could tell they were physically getting choked up, and so I didn't want to raise my hand and say, I have a headache and I'm in a lot of pain from sitting in this uncomfortable chair because I have a bad back. And well, shoot, I'll just suck it up and sit here in silence because that'll make me feel like a jerk if I raise my hand and say that after all this. Um, it ultimately didn't matter though, because, and this is where I think there's something instructive here. One of the things the judges said before the attorneys got up and started doing their thing was there are a few surefire ways to get out of jury duty. And the two big things when it comes to being a juror is you must be unbiased. And if you don't think you can do that, you need to say so, which is, where some of these people started to speak up is I can't judge this case in an unbiased manner because of my personal experience, but you must also be able to follow the law. And that's why the prosecutor, when he started out questioning the jury, he started out putting up on the screen the actual statutes by which we would have to judge this case. That it's not your gut feeling, it's not what you think should happen, it's this is the law. Under this statute, was this violated? Did, beyond a reasonable doubt, did this thing happen? Oh, all well and good. And I'm already thinking, yeah, you probably don't want my philosophy on this, but I don't want to self-sabotage, because as much as I don't want to be here, I also think in general principle, I can't rant and rave about, the state we're in. When we talked about, I don't even remember how we got on it, but I used an example last week, I think, of ridiculous ridiculous civil suits. The hot coffee one
Mhm.
is the most well known probably. And I'd forgotten I had jury duty when I made the comment, but we always blame the ambulance chasing lawyers. What That was a jury who decided that. That was us who decided
Yeah, to
that.
which I made the comment, a jury full of people wishing it happened to them. And
Exactly.
that's a biased jury.
And,
And this
and
one would be a jury full of people that would want to hang the guy or girl. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And even more so, I kind of wanted to be on the jury when the potential witness list was read out, because if anyone of you even thinks you know these people, raise your hand, because you're not. We're going to have to eliminate you, because I can't have, I can't be on the jury if my best friend is on the witness stand. That's not going to work, right? So, uh, and a number of them were FBI special agents, and I have a healthy suspicion of the FBI these days. So, but I also feel like I can be fair and unbiased when it comes to separating the institutional rot from there are still individuals doing individual work.
Well, and considering they keep pulling people from that area of investigation, you can only imagine the good ones are the only ones still left,
So, but
and they're probably overworked.
eventually, so for anyone who's never done it, you are spit out with a number when you're in the pool, and they go down the line. So if you're in the first 12, you're default on the jury. And I was number 9. So they're going to go down and they're going to eliminate people based off of whatever objections. And once they have 12, those first 12 are on the jury. So you get a little more attention if you're sitting up front, not just because you're sitting up front, but because if if nobody says anything, you're default on the jury. And so I decided I'm not going to self-sabotage myself, but they do give you an oath when you're in the central room before they send you out to the various pools in the various courts. And then if you're actually on the jury, then you take a different oath to swear in as a juror. And the oath is simply, I swear to tell the truth. Because if you're going to be questioned during voir dire, you need to speak truthfully. So since I did take that oath, it's like, oh, I'm going to answer if they ask me. And so somehow or other, I was asked directly about the punishment phase, because this defendant had elected to have the jury assign punishment if found guilty. And I said flat out, I won't do that, because the counts were uh, based on Texas statute. If you are found guilty of a single instance of creating explicit child pornography, it's 5 to 99 years. There was another count on top of that. The greater count that was being sought was continuous, which is simply two or more instances over a specific period. And that's 25 to life. And I said, I won't consider 5. That's too low. And I made it clear because the lawyer kind of asked some follow-ups, and I said, no, I'm saying that law is wrong and I won't follow it. To me, and he didn't ask, but I got to thinking afterwards of just anticipating in my head follow-up questions. And if he would have asked, I would have said 25 is my minimum, even for a single act, because at minimum, you have destroyed a child's life. And there's a couple ways to look at that. The innumerable amounts of literature shows that you're really not who you are until you're about 25, both physically and mentally. That's that's when you are who you are going to be. Another way to look at it is you've destroyed a childhood, so 18 years plus extra, because to me, the main point of punishment should be deterrence.
But
So,
we don't know the details of the case, right? Because remember,
but
we
we
have
don't
to
know the
we
details of
have
the
to use
case.
the word alleged.
Right. And
Alleged
so
at this
this
point.
is
And
that
this is where one of those fields where everybody knows my stance on the issue. I would commit things that are not legal if it happened to my boy, right?
Mhm, mhm,
But also we live in a day and age where it depends on where you are and who reported what on what the actual charge is. Because remember the day and age when you were a tiny little kid and you were playing around in the bathtub with paints and making yourself a little Indian, and then you had stickers over the photo to cover all the naughty bits. Well, I mean, how what's the fine line between that
mhm.
and child
Well,
pornography?
and he
Was it a kid running around
right.
in their small clothes or their diaper and someone reported it because it was posted on social media? That, might be on the 5-year range, or even the, oh
Well,
gosh, this is even in court.
the way it's written, and the prosecutor explained this up front when he was talking about the statute, is he used that example of no, that does not meet the standard according to the law. That uh I would not bring that case, and if I had, you should find that person not guilty because that does not meet the standard of the statute. So my thinking, and along those lines,
Yeah, but
my
again,
thought,
not knowing the details of the case, he might
right,
bring a similar case to that. It might have been just a hair further, or
right.
it's just
But see, this is where I can still justify my stance because my thinking was and is the burden and standard of proof is and should be high when you are taught both on the individual level because you are ending someone's life one way or another, even if it's not a death penalty, this person's life is over.
mhm.
Okay, so on an individual level, you need to be damn sure that this person did this thing that is alleged. And on the greater institutional level, we need to scrutinize the state if we are going to give the state this power. In order to keep them from abusing that power, we, the people, need to make sure that the state is meeting a high standard and burden of proof. But at the same time, if that burden is met, then we should not be squeamish about applying a harsh punishment because you are confident that this person did this bad thing, or
Yeah,
you
no,
shouldn't have found them guilty in the first place.
no, you are talking my language. It's just a hard discussion without knowing any details,
Mhm.
because that's my whole philosophy is the law should be as loose as possible, but if you break the little bit of law that exists, you should be crushed for it because we gave you the longest leash you could have and you still did bad things. That
Mhm.
means you're a horrible person. And no, I'm with you on that. It just I'd have to read the statutes, but so like I make horrible child porn and it's the first time, I can get as low as 5 years. But if it's two or more times, it's 25 or over. That am I
Yeah,
interpreting that right? Okay.
yeah.
So no matter how horrible the first one is, it could still be a minimum of 5.
Mhm.
Yeah, but even still, I would go into that situation going, we have a 5 to 99 range. The whole jury is going to debate on how horrible the crime was. It's if if it's worth the 25, it's still worth the 25. If it's worth the 50, it's still worth the 50. So there still is a process behind that. And if we're all reasonable people, then that process will come to the right result, even though the threshold is low. Because we could have a minor crime. We could have something that in some people's eyes might have been relatively innocent, but it met the burden of proof. Okay, well, this person made a mistake versus this person was doing something nefarious. And there's always the possibility for that. So that would have been my mindset going into that. That if it really is a horrible crime, we still would get to the proper result.
In general, I would agree with you, but in the specifics of this statute, again, not knowing the details of the case, because they make a point to not give you details because they want a clean slate. They're only giving you as much as is necessary to find the right jury, find 12, unbiased people who can sit in judgment on this jury. But so what the statute is that this defendant is being charged under, but you don't know why the state is alleging this person broke this statute.
Well, so here's one reason I'm afraid of the setting the harsh penalty too early, because have you ever done a Google search and the Google search actually was a euphemism as well? And you get
No.
and you were actually searching for something legitimate. I've done it just doing this freaking podcast where you type in something and it's under the Urban Dictionary as something else, and you get pictures that show up on the thing. What if that happened to you? And now you have child porn on your computer. Well, I would sure hope that 5-year option was there for me, because that was a legitimate mistake, but it's still evidenced on my computer.
Again, as the statute is written, that you would not be able, if you had a fair jury, they would not be able to find you guilty because it doesn't meet the statute.
I actually wonder about this. We talk about let me
well, but here's my bigger...
let me put the VPN on real quick. The FBI watching your computer. I wonder if some of those results on these search things are on purpose, so they have something on everybody.
It's hard not to be conspiratorial this day and age. But to my the bigger point that I wanted to talk about is I felt fully justified in not raising my hand and telling the judge, I can't, I'm not going to obey the law. I'm going to obey my conscience, because I can say I'm following the law because in A Great American, I believe this is I don't know where he got it from, but it's attributed to MLK Jr. An unjust law is no law at all. So yeah, I'm following the law because that's not a law. It's unjust. If the statute said that your example, based on your example of oopsie, if the statute was written in a way that, no, you have to find that guy guilty. No, I'm not. That's an unjust law. He's not guilty. And that is necessary, and it goes along the lines of what I've ranted about before, of get to know your sheriff, because they are the first line of defense basically in law enforcement, because they are elected. Well, really, I got to think about it again, that you could say the first line of defense is us as potential jurors. That no, we the people are ultimately in charge. That lawyer works for us. That judge was elected by us, and we are judging a peer in our community. If something is blatantly unjust, we are going to say, no, that's unjust.
Yeah, and this is where I'm going to back you here too, because there's two laws in play here. There's the law that you were talking about, and then there's the lying under oath law. And you didn't get selected by being honest. I would have taken a different approach, which I've brought forward as kind of a little devil's advocate here, because I am very much more of a what if person. What if and why? Those are the two questions I ask the most often. But you answered honestly and you didn't get selected. So had you answered any other way, you actually would have been lying under oath. So it's there's two laws to consider here. Your answer under oath because you could have answered untruthfully to get on the jury to take this person out.
Mhm.
That's the other part. A lot of people lie to get out of jury duty, but a lot of people lie to get in a jury because they are passionate about it. How many people, to speculate here, all the people, oh, I had trauma in my past, I needed to get out of this case. How many people out there are saying, I had trauma in my past, I need to get this person? I
Mhm.
get one. I get to get one now. It's my turn.
Mhm.
That idea exists, and it probably is on that panel if you look at the numbers.
True. Very true. All right. Well, I got to run. Do we want to keep going here, or we think we're good
No,
on
we're
this topic?
good. I've got to finish some finals. Today's the last one, so for good or bad, it will be over. Uh, I think it'll be good on this one, but the stats, we'll see what my grade comes out as.
Oh,
I was under, so this is my problem with my stats final. It's the research proposal final draft. And the new APA 7 guidelines is APA wants you to be as concise as possible in your language and not waste words. But they didn't change the word count requirement. So I'm sitting about 400 words short and going, if I add anything to this paper, it's going to be just fluff and bullshit. So I'm either going to get docked for word count or docked for conciseness.
well,
And so
oopsie.
I said, well, I'll get docked for word count. And I turned it in. And then I thought about it later. I'm like, if there's two sentences I put together that aren't very concise, I could end up getting docked for both now. Had I gotten for word count, I would guarantee only one docking with the conciseness. So I should have gone the other way, but my integrity said no.
Well, have fun with that. All right. Well, we'll
Yeah.
see y'all Friday
All right.
for some happier discussion as we get into Matt in Knife of Dreams.
Oh, that's always fun.